Hey there, friends. My name's Matthew. I'm the C# artisan, and this is the 8th video in my series on SendGrid. In the last 2 videos, we took a look at SendGrid templates. We learned how to design a template, and we learned how to write some C# code to send messages that are based on a template. Now, I want to take a little time to talk about template management. So what do I mean by that? Well, in any application that's using templates, there's the possibility that you might want to do something like retrieve a list of templates or retrieve the raw HTML for a given template. Just basically interact with the templates through code so that you can perform kind of management or administrative functions or present a list to the users, that kind of thing. So that's what we're going to learn how to do. Now, when we went and learned to send mail via SendGrid and C#, we found that SendGrid has a NuGet package with some very nice convenience classes, some wrappers that really speed up the development process and make it just very easy to send mail. So wouldn't it be nice if they did the same thing for things like template management? It would be nice, and the answer is a little disappointing. So there is some support, kinda. It's not bad, but it's not ideal. Still, it does work, and we'll take a look at it, and as always, we're going to actually start with the REST API. We'll open up Postman and look how to interact with templates through that, and then port it on over into some C# code. So here we go, template management in SendGrid. So here we are in Postman, and you'll notice I've added 2 new items to my SendGrid collection, one called Get Templates and one called Get Template Version. So let's look at Get Templates. It's a get, and it goes to api.sendgrid.com, v3 templates, and then it requires a couple of query parameters. Generations, which will be dynamic because we're doing dynamic templates, and page size, which I'm setting to 200, which is the max. If we send this, we get back a lovely JSON result that shows us our templates. So here is the vehicle inspection template that we created a couple videos ago. And here is the appointment reminder template that we used to send some messages. And you can see that one has 2 versions, and we've got some information about the versions. There's also a third template here, my test score email template. So that's how you get information about templates. Let's now look at Get Template Version. And this also goes to v3 templates, and then you put in a template ID, which I got from here. You put in the word versions in the path, and then you can specify a version, which I also picked out from here. Here's the version ID. So when we run that one, we get information, a little more detail about this version. We get the fact that it's active and has a name, but also the HTML content and a plain text version of it. So this could be really helpful. So the question is, how do we go get all this via C#? And the reality is SendGrid does not provide us with really fancy wrappers. There's no get templates method that already has all these classes serialized for you. Just like when we did messages, it was all kind of done for us. So we're going to have to hand roll it a little. We're going to need to create serialization classes for these, and we're going to need to call a special SendGrid method called request async, which is really just a wrapper for doing the REST API. It doesn't provide a whole lot of convenience on top of what you could just do yourself with an HTTP client. But let's run it through so you can see how it works. And where we need to start is generating some serialization classes. And fortunately, we have really nice tools for doing this. So I'm going to select this, select all, copy. I'm going to go over here to GitHub Copilot. And in Visual Studio GitHub Copilot, I'm going to, let's just start a brand new conversation, and I'll say create C# serialization classes for the following JSON. And I'll paste that in, and let's send that and see what Copilot does. So it's thinking, and here we go. Fantastic. It has now generated lovely JSON serialization classes for us. So we can go ahead and say, let's insert this into a new file. Now it thinks we want the file to be named root. It's suggesting that. It also has not properly given me my namespace. So that's a problem. So we're going to fix a couple of things here. The first thing we'll do is we're going to save this file, and we're going to just call it SendGrid serialization. And then I'm going to change this class to be get templates response so that it has a reasonable name. And then let me make sure I get our namespace correct. So I can just look here. It's called SendGrid example. We can go ahead and add that and do that. And there we go. So now we have some serialization classes we can use. Let's build, make sure everything's fine, and it's fine. So now we can go ahead and use it. So we are going to send a get templates request, basically, and it uses query parameters. So the way SendGrid wants that done is it wants the query parameters supplied also as a little JSON document. So I've written that one out here, and I'm just going to add it. So it wants something that's going to look like this with generations and page size. So now we have all of our serialization classes. We're going to go here to our project and say add class, and we can just call this template management. Fantastic. And we do need a few namespaces. I've tested out the code, and I'm just copying and pasting for speed here. And we can call this public static class template management. And our first function is really going to implement that get templates function. So let's do this. There we go. All right, so get templates response. Very good. So what do we have? Internal static async task, which is going to get us a get templates response. And we're calling this function get templates async. So we create a SendGrid client. We create the request JSON object and serialize it. So now we have a JSON string. And here is the special secret sauce. We're going to call client.requestAsync. And it wants a method, which will be get. It wants the URL path, which will be templates. And in this case, it wants query parameters, which we will set to our request JSON. So this will give us a SendGrid response back. And then we will check. And if it is a successful response, we can read the JSON out, and then we can return the deserialization of the JSON. So I'm going to just, we can step through this. I'm going to set a breakpoint here. And what we need to do is go to our program, and we need to say await template management dot get templates async. That should launch it. So let's build. How are we doing? Yep. And let's go ahead and run. And it should just zoom in. It's running. It's trying to run. And hit our breakpoint. So we create our client. We set up our request. And you can see here what our request looks like if we use the JSON visualizer, right? We can see what that document is. And then we go ahead and we send it off to SendGrid. And if it was status code, then we get our JSON response. So we can take a look at that. There it is in the text visualizer. And we can also look at it using the JSON visualizer. And you can see it has 3 items, and each item represents a template, and each template has a versions array. So we got the expected result back, and then it doesn't deserialize because we have some sort of serialization problem. So, all right, so this is where we probably have to get in there and fix our JSON serialization a little bit. But I think it illustrates the point of how we would get this to work. Let's go ahead and set up the other one. Let's get the template version one going as well, because it's just slightly different and it's worth seeing. So let me grab it and we'll paste it in. And we called this, what did we call it? Oh, did I not bring that over? No, I forgot to serialize it. So let's go back to our result here. Let's grab the JSON back to Visual Studio, and we can say create a C# serialization class for this JSON. Let's see what it can do. And here we have a template detail. So in this case, I'm just going to copy the class, and we can add it to our serialization classes. And now this is called template detail. All right, and I'm going to set a breakpoint here, but well, let's read it first. So what we have is, let me change that. We can make our client in the function body. That'll be easier. So we'll make a client, and again, we're going to call request async. That's the API method, and our method is get. And in this case, we are formatting a URL path using a template ID and a version ID, and we should be able to get some results. So I'll set a breakpoint there, and we'll go back to our program, and we'll change this to get template version async. And now it expects some values, so we better go back to Postman, and we can actually grab them from here, go back, and we can do a little magic. Okay, so I think that should work. Let's run it, see if our breakpoint hits. So we'll create the client, and we're going to now call request async. And if that worked, we got some JSON back, and let's go look at it in the JSON visualizer. And there we have everything that we saw in Postman, and it doesn't want to deserialize that either because there's a date time problem. So this again has to do with the fact that I think we have some things coming back as epoch dates that are not deserializing properly, and we probably should just bring them back as strings and do some manipulation. I'm okay with that. I'm okay leaving it there with these errors, because that's really about JSON serialization, not about SendGrid. So just to wrap up and review, when we sent messages using functions like simple message send, we created a SendGrid client, and then we got to use convenience classes like SendGrid message, email address, personalization, and and the like. So we got these helper classes that made it so we could do very object-oriented programming. And then we actually called a named method called sendEmailAsync, which tells you what it does. So this is great API support, lovely, 100%. When it comes to some of these administrative functions, what we end up needing to do is call this all-purpose method called client.requestAsync, which is really just a simple wrapper on top of sending an HTTP request. And it's our responsibility to also provide all the JSON serialization. But it does work. I'm sorry that it didn't fully work here in this demo, but I think you get the point. And if you need to do template management or other SendGrid kind of management API tasks, now you know how to do them. You just use request async. Okay, I hope that was helpful. Okay, so I changed my mind. I realized that was kind of sad to leave you all with some code that compiles but doesn't run. And I figure if you have watched through the video this far, you probably have another minute in your life to see how we fix that JSON serialization error. And I went and asked GitHub Copilot to help me. I said, the selected C# in the template detail class defines a datetime field called updateAt. Here is an example of a value for updatedat. And I gave it what we had. At runtime, I'm getting a serialization error that this isn't valid. Please help me. And it explains the issue arises because JSON date format is not standard ISO 8601, and which is what system.text.json expects. And to fix this, we can define a custom converter, which it so nicely wrote and which I added to our project. And then it explained that once you have your custom converter defined, you put an attribute on any datetime field that needs it, and everything should work. And lo and behold, it does. So in the program, I've got some modifications here where I'm actually getting the template's response, looping through it, and writing all of our templates to the console. And just to prove to you that it really does work, let's go ahead and set a breakpoint right here when we deserialize that JSON, and let's run our code. So it's running. You can see in the console that it has started. We hit our breakpoint, F5 just to let it run, and no serialization error, and all of our template details show up. So thanks for your patience. And we now have a fully functional example of template management with SendGrid. Hey there, C# friends. Are you enjoying these videos and finding them helpful? I hope so. And if you are, please go ahead and like the video on YouTube. If you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel and feel free to leave a comment. I would love to hear from you.